everyone.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Angelica.
And you are listening to the LDAYS Plugged In podcast. Today, we are going to give you the DL on navigating the holidays and new beginnings with an LD. Before we get into the episode, let's give you some upcoming news.
LDAYS is excited to announce a series of workshops for the new year, including Ask an Expert, an hour with an educational consultant. This session will be led by Karen and Ann Wolf from Wolf Educational Services, giving you the chance to ask your questions about accommodations, assistive technology, advocacy, social and emotional support, learning skills, and more.
Join us on Zoom for this informative workshop on January 14th at 7 p.m. If you're interested in this valuable opportunity, visit www.ldays.org. That's www.ldays.org. The homepage will have details about this workshop and our other upcoming programs and services.
Absolutely. You can find all of our up-and-coming services right on the homepage.
Now let's jump into this topic. So the first thing that comes to mind, at least on my end with the holidays, besides the actual holidays themselves, is how busy it is. It is busy for all of us. I think we can all agree to that, no matter your denomination or what you like to do during the holidays. And personally, I think that there can be a lot of self-care involved with that, to act as a way to alleviate the busyness. I guess with that, do you have any thoughts, Angelica?
Yeah, and it's also not just in general the holidays, but we get affected during our personal lives, our workplace, and even when we're off school for a couple weeks. It really gives us that, that sense of pressure because it's towards the holidays and we're really trying to wrap everything up and then get ready for the holidays and go into the new year. So I feel like everything around us is being affected, either if you don't celebrate the holiday or if you do, it's just that pressure.
Right, that's a great point. It's almost like keeping up with self-care is important in general, but and then there's something about the holiday period that exacerbates it. It puts a spotlight right over it.
Definitely, I agree. So, Anthony, I would love for you to share what advice could you give someone struggling to maintain that self-care during this time?
So there's a few ideas I can think of just off the top of my head and keeping it general. The first would be that it's okay to change your self-care habits if you find that ultimately self-care is supposed to work for you and there's no tried and true formula for everyone. So if you find you aren't getting the desired results from what you're doing, it's definitely okay to change things up. The other thing I would recommend is it's also okay to get help. Self-care is an important thing, and a lot of times it can feel like you don't necessarily know where to start, or you don't know that what are some things that I do that can count as self-care, and what are some things that are just more so relaxing or more timid activities. So there's a lot of resources online. There's actually a lot of self-care support groups as well, although that's obviously going to vary depending on where you live. But a starting point like that is definitely what I would recommend.
And I feel like it's okay if you can't really find what works for you, because I feel like for myself, for someone who's always busy in the hustle and bustle and needs to maintain that schedule routine or that schedule, sometimes it's okay to feel overwhelmed. And I know it's weird saying that, but if you're not used to just being at home and just taking your self-care in a different way or how to change that type of self-care, it's okay just to do nothing for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And you eventually get into that rhythm again. So for someone like myself, let's say if I'm taking 2 weeks off, I have to mentally prepare myself that I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off. I have to put it in a calendar. Okay, what activities am I doing? Am I going to be, do I need to study over the holidays? Do I need to complete some assignments? Do I need to read over the holidays? What is it that I need to do? So it takes a lot of planning. It is overwhelming because you're trying to plan 2 weeks, but it's okay if nothing goes through the way you want it. And that's when you start to realize it's okay. If I didn't do this task, let me just sit down, watch a movie, maybe go outside, get out there. I know some of us don't like to because it's really cold, but just immersing yourself outside with fresh air will help you kind of clean your mind and your head. So this way you can get back to what you want to do.
It's also a good idea to know and accept that when you have a self-care habit that can feel very good, but it's ultimately not good for you. And I'll give an example that I don't mind sharing. I'm definitely one of those people that can sleep on a couch. I know sometimes people feel uncomfortable, but I personally love it. And to me, a self-care activity that I enjoy, even though it's not good for me, is, let's say I'm watching something really late at night. I may passively just fall asleep on the couch. But knowing myself, that can also turn into a few nights where that repeats, and ultimately it's just not a good habit to form. I'll admit it's a flaw that I'm working on. But yeah, having the self-awareness to know what constitutes good self-care is another tip. And it's just going over what you were talking about, Angelica, with anticipating when you're going to have more free time, for example. That really just strung up in my head while you were speaking with me. So yeah, just thought I would add it.
And we're not saying to take a trip to the Bahamas to have some self-care. It would be nice, but just the little things. Again, like I said, it's watching that movie, or maybe I'm going to take a walk, or you know what? I'm actually going to go to the mall and just walk around. I find if you're a busy person like myself, you need to kind of stay active to a certain extent, and just let me just hop on a subway or go train and explore the city and see what it's looking like. So for me, that's my type of self-care. It's just pretty much putting everything on pause and trying to find the things that I do love and enjoy it that way.
And doing things with others as well. That's, I think, another important aspect of self-care. Friendship, socializing with people. We're social creatures. That's something that is just as valid.
And it's okay if plans don't go the way you want them. It's okay. We can always find different ways, right? Even spending time with your family, brother or sister, whoever you got at home, it's always nice to catch up with them for an hour or two.
Yeah, yeah. And I even think that's more so the case for people with learning disabilities, because I think sometimes navigating daily life, we have alternative methods of doing that. So I find personally having routine contact with friends allows me to kind of regain perspective every once in a while and not get lost in my own thoughts, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, when I don't do that, I find I have certain perceptions that I really like to hold on to, and it becomes hard to kind of address them later. Whereas if I'm constantly talking with different friends, especially with friends from different walks of life, it keeps me really grounded and shows me that no, it's okay to watch the same movie on different screens, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And of course, with trying to fit in the time for self care, how do you manage the stress and the anxiety when it gets very hectic? Because, once we get into that routine, our bodies tend to slow down, and then all of a sudden the holidays are coming. And if you're a big family, you got to go to probably 10 different people's homes. There's just so much anticipation. There's the stress, there's the anxiety, or maybe just you at home and you're just like with your own family. How do you keep up with it? How do you manage your stress?
Well, I think kind of like just like how you will plan for when you have free time and anticipate it, I kind of like to do the opposite. I know when a busy season is coming, so I don't go into it with the same lens that, okay, I'm still going to be able to have the regular amount of break time right now. I'm still going to be able to have all these extra commitments and it's fine. I kind of go in with this will be a very busy but often rewarding and fun time. So I don't want to say let's get through it, but let's make the most of it while it's happening. And then we can kind of revert back to a more normal schedule after the holiday season, which is the case in most part.
Now, if you're someone who has been working and not in school, and now you're into the workforce and trying to manage all of that, for example, I'm be possibly working Saturday and Sundays, and it's like, how do I plan for that? How do I prioritize my self-care? So unfortunately, with my job being so demanding, I cannot prioritize. The only time I have is literally when I put my son to bed, and I've got that extra 30 minutes to myself before I got to get up at 3:50 in the morning to get ready for work. So for me, I've learned to just pretty much every morning, positive affirmations. It's going to be a good day. Ask for help when you need it, especially during the holidays when you're managing family. It's more of like, I need help. And I'm so thankful for my parents and my brother who's able to help me out when possible. You just need to ask for help at the end of the day. It goes a long way. I know we get a little bit shy, but just ask for help. Family is going to be there to help you out. So I'm actually getting a little bit anxiety thinking about it as we're talking about it. And it's a perfect example because this is what we typically, some of us go through because we're in the workforce. Schedules are being changed. How do I manage the household? How do I manage my work? How do I maintain calm? And I'm just really planning ahead and trying to figure out, okay, how many hours I'm going to be at work? Like, what is the schedule going to be like? Of course, my son's going to be taken care of. So there's these moving parts that we have. And then leading up to it, I'm hoping that it should fall into place, but we'll see what happens.
Now, Angelica, that brings up an interesting point. Let me ask you something. As anxiety inducing as this time of the year could be for you, do you feel a little alleviated right now speaking with me?
Actually, I do. And this is where it kind of brings everything into full circle of what we suggested, because talking to somebody else who knows similarities of what I go through, like yourself, Anthony, it's easy to just kind of speak out. Well, this is what I'm going through. This is what I have happening. This is what is going to look like in the next literally 6 weeks right now. And it helps just to just release it all.
That
You to
is
be with it.
exactly what I'm getting at. A large part of what the LDAYS does, and a large part of what support for people with learning disabilities is the actual content of, peer support meetings or social clubs. It's not exactly rocket science, but the importantness is being able to just acknowledge how you're feeling, acknowledge where you're going through, acknowledge the different processes. And that becomes a fundamentally important thing. It just reinforces that you're not the only one experiencing this, and there's others like you, and you can bounce ideas off of. So yeah, particularly with self-care during the holiday season, I think it's okay to acknowledge that the holidays can be stressful. I think it's okay to acknowledge that the holidays at times can feel overwhelming. And it's also okay to be really excited still for the holidays and the fact you'll get to see people you might often not get a chance to see at most points during the time of the year. We can have it both ways, everybody. We can have it all.
We can. We really can. It's just acknowledging, like you said, and being able to speak to somebody and ask for help is definitely going to help you out. Even at work, don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I'm overwhelmed. I need some help. And your employer should be able to help you out any way possible. Because at the end of the day, this is where the time of year companies are strangling, like, oh my goodness, how do we get through December to get ready for January? So it is the last quarter coming up. So, just ask for help. It's okay.
I guess that then brings me to, if we can slightly pivot, Angelica, another thing that we can do to maybe not focus on the incoming tide of busyness is we can actually look in the rearview mirror a bit and maybe just kind of look at the year as it's coming to a close. And I'm just curious if this year, was there any moment where maybe you learned something new and or you handled a challenge, and did you do anything that you kind of finished and it was like, oh, I'm surprised. I didn't know I had that in me, or I'm kind of glad how it turned out, but that wasn't exactly what I was anticipating.
Well, I definitely got to say, this year's been a crazy one, a roller coaster one. It's been hectic. It's been a lot of change. I recently just got into a new position, something that I've been working towards for the past 5 years. And I did not expect to happen so fast, but I guess you meet the right people at the right time when you're networking, which is very difficult for me to this day. Having a learning disability and ADHD, you get the nervous Nellies, like they say, you get that anticipation of anxiety. And sometimes it can be very hard when you're speaking to somebody in a higher role in the company. So with that being said, I did not expect to get promoted, get transferred, starting a new position. It's been a couple weeks. It's been a lot. It is a challenge. It's something new. I knew a little bit about it, but I'm not afraid to tell my new team, hey, I have a learning disability. This is what I require. This is what I need. This is other accommodations I might possibly need, but not at the moment. And it's been going really well. It is a lot of stuff that I'm learning. Again, it's the change, it's the transition. But I could say, looking back, I'm glad I was able to hit this goal. I was probably projecting next year, February would be when I was able to transfer or change. So I'm really happy how things have happened this whole year, despite of all the personal stuff that I'm going through. So I can say I'm really proud of myself and I'm really happy. And I just cannot wait to see what 2025 has in store for me. It's weird saying 2025, by the way.
Makes you feel a lot more confident, though, that you've been through this. And
Yeah,
yeah, it is weird saying 2025, but time waits for no one. So yeah.
for sure. And for yourself, Anthony, what did you learn about 2024? What can you reflect on your progress?
I've learned a lot this year, but if there's one thing that I want to share, especially for the purposes of why we do this in the first place, relative to my learning disability, I've learned that sometimes the outside world isn't going to be as much of a supportive place of who you are. But if you have mechanisms in place, in which case, I have supportive friends. I have what I do with you right now, Angelica. I have the LDAYS team. It's okay to just get back up after you've been knocked down. And for context, I left a previous workplace where, among other problems, it became apparent that I was being seen in a certain way because of my diagnosis, and I only disclosed it to one person in a moment of vulnerability, and people I guess talk. So it did kind of feel like a blow, but I really thought about much of the good that being open for the most part has served me, where I've got to learn a lot about myself. I've got to learn a lot about others and feel really connected with this thing. So I can say with utmost confidence now that it doesn't affect me, I think, as much as I thought it was going to affect me as it was going on. So that's just been something interesting to look at the hindsight. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier today with the importance of self-care and being able to reach out to others and be vulnerable. I think this is part and parcel. When you have a support system in place, you can get knocked down. It's easier to bounce back up. You shouldn't so much fear being suddenly in a situation, but maybe having some plans in place where you can, in your own way, disclose to a certain amount that's appropriate for you and you feel comfortable sharing. I think that can be a lot more meaningful to you in the long run and a lot more helpful.
I agree. I really agree. And with the support system, I feel like a lot of us struggle with creating a support system and having experienced different work environments, either through the workplace or through school. Creating a support system can be overwhelming at times. And I wanted to ask you, what qualities do you think are especially important in a support system?
For me, the first one would definitely be the ability to be honest. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be forthcoming about every single thing in your life, but I do think if you're willing to reach out to people in your support system, there has to be certain things that you feel comfortable sharing. That's why if you look, a lot of support groups, or at least it's my own theory, a lot of support groups are attached to like a certain topic, a certain people who've been through something, maybe people who are a newer part of a group, people who are new to a certain area. They all share a common theme. So if you're not willing to be honest about that, I think it's hard to build rapport and even just both put yourself out there and get meaningful advice and information and support back in return. So that's definitely one aspect. The second aspect that I think is important is upkeep, I guess. So maybe sometimes you don't necessarily feel like connecting. Angelica, have you ever went into like one of these podcasts, for example, and you may have thought it was going to go one way and then it ended up going a lot deeper than you expected? Do you get what I
Yeah, it
mean?
happens. Yeah.
Okay, so that's exactly like what I'm getting at. I'm not saying we go into episodes with like negative impressions about how it's going to go because, well, I don't want to speak for others, but I don't think that's ever been the case. But I've left doing this podcast at times surprised, whether that's from information that was divulged by guests, just sharing our personal stories. I've left with a lot more insight than I anticipated going in. And to me, that just shows like, oh, this is rewarding. I should keep doing this. And I kind of think you can have that attitude with a support system. If you have a general idea of when you want to meet, you might not always feel exactly up to it each time you go, but you'd be surprised how many times it's really rewarding. So I guess, yeah, the other piece of advice I would urge you to do is to keep going.
Yeah, and you know what? I think starting off is, seeing your local chapter of the LDA, and you can find your support system through that. Because I know for us, it's hard to sometimes even go up to your parents or going up to your siblings, your friends. And, some of us may be starting that relationship, that talk of, hey, I want to talk to you because I'm overwhelmed. I've got anxiety. To start, I think it's great to find your local chapter or even a teacher that you can talk to and say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Like, what resources do you have? Right. And starting creating that support system. I feel like for me with the support system, I'm lucky that I do have a great relationship with my parents and I'm able to sit and talk for hours and how I feel. And it's helped me pretty much, share what I'm going through. And of course, I get the same words of encouragement because it is a parent point of view. They want to see your kids happy, they don't want to see you struggle. And it's a little bit different when you go to an outsider. For example, me being in the workplace, in the workforce, I gravitate to certain people and I just sit there and talk to them and they'll give me hard advice. And that's my support system. That's what I need. I need someone to really be hard on me and say, you're going to be okay. Just snap out of it. Life is still going to go on.
It helps
How
you
do you,
reframe your thoughts,
exactly.
basically, which I think
Pretty
is like
much.
one of the biggest things for change. I think is that it's I don't want to say it's that simple, but it's such something that gets overlooked. The idea to change both in and out of your control can be, I think, viewed a lot more differently and welcomed if you change your perspective on it. So I think a lot of times change gets viewed as inherently negative or very scary even. And I think viewing change more so as something that's both inevitable and something that often provides opportunities can go a long way.
Yeah, and also maintaining that support system can be difficult. And there's challenges that come with that. Like, I just transitioned from a job. I was working with those people for 2 years. I built a great relationship, a great rapport. We had the same interaction. You have a problem, I have a problem. We both talk about it. Now, this is the change where it comes in, where I'm working with a whole new different group of people. I feel like we get so comfortable from what we had before, and then change happens. We have to learn to adjust slowly, which is very difficult for a lot of us, especially for myself, depending on the situation. So, maintaining a support system can be difficult, but it will get better. You got to find other sources.
Because you have to be flexible. Like routines are helpful, but in order you have to remain open to both new opportunities, approaches. It allows you to handle unforeseen changes, which if there's one thing I've learned from life so far, you can't you can't outplan change. It'll always find a way of integrating itself into your life, you know. And I don't say that to frighten people. I say that to, once you accept it, it becomes a lot more it becomes a lot less stressful.
Definitely. So, Anthony, what
Yes.
do you think, or what could you suggest if we don't have a support system, or if there's somebody out there who can't find one? And mind you, I know I just said you can go to your local chapter, find some help going to the school, but what happens if you don't want to? Because there's that anxiety build that we talked about at the beginning. We get scared, we have that fear. Like, what do you think? What do you suggest they should go?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is you're going to have to really decide if maybe there's a chance of the risk being worth the reward. I don't want to say that it's entirely up to people and that this can't be scary, but at the same time, you won't ever build a support network just standing idle and doing nothing, right? So, just using your example, Angelica, about maybe someone being anxious about going to the library. Well, instead of ruling it out entirely, maybe you can see a lot of times now, if you put a library into Google, it tells you when a library is the most busy, right? So maybe you can see when a library is least busy and try to go there. And maybe that can be less scary. Maybe you can see if you can go to a support staff from the library in a far off corner and explain what book you're looking for example, or whatever information, and they can retrieve the item for you. So I'm acknowledging that doing an activity like that, for example, especially the first time, can be scary. But just because of those feelings, I don't think you should necessarily rule it out entirely. I still think there should be efforts. If you don't have a support system, you're going to have to find ways of laying those initial bricks out, so to speak, and laying the foundation. So it could be an instance of, I feel like I don't want to discuss this with any of my friends. Okay, well, maybe just take a cursory look at some support groups. Maybe you can see which ones are online and you don't have to show your face if you feel more comfortable. Or you can pick ones that are not nearby where you live, so even if you go in person, who cares? It's in another area, not close to you, and nobody's going to recognize you in most cases, right? So I would suggest workarounds, but still with an initiative, if that makes sense.
I was going to suggest to start journaling your thoughts. I
Oh,
feel like
that's also good idea too. Yeah.
I feel like some of us out there are probably not at that stage. It is difficult. And the one thing I found learning about this year, just to backtrack a little bit, is journaling. Even finding those self-care, I know it's in the self in the word with these books, these journals, and it's super awesome to see how everything's laid out. How's your day? How you're feeling? What are your 3 goals for today? And then you reflect back in the evening. How did you feel about, did you accomplish what you wanted, or what's bothering you? You don't need to go crazy, but you can just buy just piece of paper, pen, and write your thoughts. Or if you're tech savvy, open up the notes application, start typing away. How are you feeling? What's bothering you? What do you want to change? And I feel like that's going to help a lot of you who won't be able to find that support system. But actually releasing your thoughts on paper has helped me significantly to really just let whatever's on my mind reflect on what happened. How do I
Do you
make it
find
better?
it's made things more clear?
Yes, it has. It's kind of like talking to yourself, which it sounds weird, but I'm at that age anyway that I feel like I talk to myself anyway, but it's just on paper, at least you can say, you know what, I'm having a crappy day. I had a crappy day. This person annoyed me because of A, B, and C. And how do I change it? What are ways that I could improve, or what should I do? Just throwing it on paper is what helps, because then you're just releasing those anxieties, those insecurities, and hopefully you can look back in, let's say, a couple weeks from now from journaling, and you can say, wow, like things have changed. What is it?
Well,
So
even in the present, I think it makes things not so abstract, right? Like everyone's probably heard in terms of dealing with like negative thoughts and low self-esteem. Well, would you say that about a friend? And then when somebody answers no, you can say, okay, so why would you say that about yourself? But in most cases, that's just easier said than done. Like our mind is just automatic, right? So thoughts come in and then they build up from there. So maybe something like journaling, it gives that extra sense of clarity. You can kind of see your thoughts all in one, and it gives you a chance to judge it accordingly and be like, do I really feel about that exactly? Maybe yes, maybe no. But you can at least finish a journaling session by saying, well, I gave those complex and hard emotions and thoughts a double take at the very least, right?
yeah, exactly. And after you're done your journal, you can publish it and make some money off of it.
Yeah, so see, there's multiple uses. All fits well within the system.
Exactly. So with change, the support system comes with change. And with change, we all go through change. We've talked about it a little bit. And also, change is so difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Change is really hard for me, probably for yourself. How do you cope with change?
So for me, I think I focus on setting realistic goals. And what I mean by realistic goals, I think you should be able to revise your goals at least once, in my opinion. It's very easy the first time to, if it's positive change, I think it's easy to get overexcited. If it's a negative change, it can feel that I just want to plan these as quickly as I can and then, oh, okay, it's done with. But are you really going to stick to them if you're not willing to embrace your goals? Probably not. That's how I think to realistically respond to change. And then it goes back to what we were saying. Just find ways to not live within your own head. Find ways to maybe get that clarity. And if you can, have a support network. Now, whether that's by yourself in your journal or among others in different settings, that's up to you. But I think those are the two main components I think that can really help with accepting change.
How do you experience change?
Well, you definitely don't have to wait for it. It's going to happen. That's that's one. Um,
But what emotions are you feeling? Because I feel like even though we've got listeners with LD or without LD, to just kind of give them what it's like. Because a lot of us, we can't share that. We can't express it. We try to maintain professional in our school and our work. We carry these emotions inside. So, for example, for myself, when it comes to change, you're stressed. I'm stressed. I have anxiety. I'm nervous. I get overwhelmed. And it's like, there's change is change. It's a whole new team. It's a whole new group. It's a whole new sound, a whole new environment. It's everything's new, right? And I get the jitters. I get nervous. I just get really hot and heated because you're just trying to cope all these emotions inside and it doesn't know how else to release as well, and it just keeps adding on to it. That's what I go through. So I was curious to know if you go through the similar thing as I do.
I have at different times in my life. I also think it's good though, and it can be strong to recognize when a change has happened, particularly that's like it's changed the core of something. So it could be a relationship you had, or it could be a workplace that you're no longer a part of, or an area that you no longer live in. I find when changes like that happens, you really get like this moment of clarity, like, oh no, like I can't just go physically back to that place or that person. Like there's been a fundamental shift. And that can feel very scary at first. But I feel like accepting that is crucial to be able to plan accordingly for whatever the next steps may be. So I'll give you an example. When I started doing this, it's funny. I went through the first few months and it kind of just felt normal. And then I remember exactly where it was, a school in Kleinburg, and it was for an assembly. And it really hit me that, oh, I'm being open about this. Even though it's in front of people I don't know, there's a lot of them. And I didn't start to doubt myself, but I really had to stop and like breathe and think, wow, like this is going to be different from now on. And once I did reach that, though, I found it was easier to continue and kind of think like, okay, well, what do I want to do with the LDOAS? What impact do I want to do? Okay, I understand this is kind of like an ecosystem where everyone contributes, and then in the meantime, we all help to normalize what it's like to have a learning disability. Well, then how can I best do that? And then from there, it began to slowly build. But I remember prior to that pivotal moment at the school in Kleinburg, I didn't view it necessarily the same.
When the change happens, we have transition.
Yes. Yep,
And
exactly.
with transition, we hope by then we are slowly unwinding down with our emotions and being able to enjoy the transition and the process. Again, change can be positive and it could be not, I'm not going to say it's sad or negative, but well, it really depends, right? But I think what we're focusing on is kind of like your day to day, as in the workforce or school. It does happen. And planning for that change, you've got the transition, you're in the change, going through the transition. All right, we got the hang of it. We know what we got to do. and we just run with it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it.
And it's okay to slow down if you need to, because again, there's so much happening within our minds. And I feel like my mind juggles all the time and it gets overwhelmed. And even at night, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about, okay, this is what I got to do the next day. My mind doesn't sleep. Again, it's just the way my mind functions. And it's so hard every single day to go to bed and thinking, okay, what do I need to do the next day? But with the transition, I feel like the way I cope with it is once I get the groove, it may take me 2 weeks, it may take me 3 or 4 weeks. It's okay as long as I'm getting my work done, my tasks are done, or if you're in school, making sure you're going to your classes, getting your assignments done, the transition will become easier. And then you get back to that routine again. Like, hey, you know what? I'm loving this course. I did well on this assignment, or hey, I'm loving my new team, or we did a great presentation for a client. Whatever it is, right? We enjoy that transition, and you can't really plan. It's just gonna happen.
Everyone was new at some point, right? I think that's a big takeaway from this. And especially if you can, maybe your younger you could see you now. I'm sure they would be very impressed. I think that's something that you, Angelica, should definitely consider. I think it's what everybody listening should consider as well. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy when we really should be our best friend. And yeah, that's definitely been a key takeaway, I think, from our discussion today.
Now, setting goals is another one part of this whole entire topic when it comes to new beginnings as well. We go through the change, we go through the transition, and now setting our goals, celebrating the small wins. And I got to be honest with you, ever since I became an entrepreneur, part-time entrepreneur, I should say, you got to celebrate the small wins. You can't just, aim high. What I'm trying to say is like, oh, I'm going to make 100 sales. That's your main goal for this year. No, let's celebrate every 5 or every 10 or every 20 and build from that. Or, hey, I'm going to meet 20 people this year, just random strangers. Okay, let's not give ourselves 20 right away. Let's celebrate the small wins. Hey, I actually met somebody in line at the coffee shop. This person was Anthony. We had a great conversation. Just celebrating the small wins of what you are doing and anything that you're doing is going to be helpful for you to succeed on the bigger wins, in my opinion.
It's a process, not an event, right? Like that's I always like that frame of mind, and I think yeah, celebrating the small wins and approaching being able to do huge undertakings and big projects, including projects of self-acceptance and getting familiar and wanting to know more about yourself, can definitely be approached with the same mindset.
What ways are you celebrating your goals, no matter how small?
I find debriefing helps. So if something went, whether something went the way that I exactly wanted it to, or I completely fumbled, I think it's important to examine the why. What did I enjoy about this, working on this goal? What was not so good? And use that. Can I use this to rectify it if it wasn't how I wanted it to be? Can I use it if it's been really positive? How can I keep the momentum going? Or, I don't want to say accept defeat because that's such a cliche, but like re-strategize if you need to. It's okay to admit when something's not working for you, right? Like so my whole life I thought I wanted to be in radio. I got a job right out of school in radio. And 6 months later, I didn't want to work in radio anymore. I liked the environment. I liked the people. Don't get me wrong. It's just there were some things that I did in the interim while I was in school that, oh, okay, this will broaden my experiences and this will help with what I want to do in radio. And then by the time I actually got there, I was like, I actually enjoy that stuff a lot more. Let's consider different pathways. And I think if I didn't debrief, just giving that example, and I kind of just kept going what was already established, ultimately I'm not going to be happy. So I've learned from that experience, and whether it's what I do with the LDYS, whether it's what I do at work, whether it's what I do in my personal life. I think debriefing is definitely, for me, it's a fundamental aspect of celebrating your goals because it shows that you're willing to put time, energy, and care into them, where you're able to scrutinize them and look at things as non-objectively as possible.
I like that. I like the whole debriefing. And it's for me, it's not putting too much pressure. Like I'm going to take an example. I do have a podcast and I started, my goodness, it's going to be almost 7 years. Yeah. So it's wasn't about like, oh, I'm going to hit 100 episodes or I'm going to have this or I want to have that. No, it's more of let me get through the 5. Let me do another 5. And I know for a lot of podcasters, it's all about the numbers. It's more of just actually, doing the work and pressing publish and making it known out there. And then the rest just falls into place. And we don't think about the numbers. You'll see the increase of people from different countries tuning in. The way you market your podcast is a different thing. So I've learned that whole journey and being able to accept the little wins in order to be rewarded the bigger stuff, which I'm very proud of. And when it comes to work, it's more of, all right, I'm in a 1-year plan right now in my new position. And I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G to accomplish. And those are going to be my little wins that I'm going to be celebrating as I progress. So don't put pressure on yourself. Be able to celebrate the small stuff. And if you did the best you can, it's okay. Like if you were trying to aim for that 100% on that assignment, but you got 99, I know some of us would be like defeated. What was that 1%? It's okay because we don't need that extra added pressure. At least we did the best we can. And then we know for the next time.
That's really insightful, Angelica. I like that both as an analogy and a practical strategy for us with this podcast as well, frankly. I think we got a lot out of this discussion. We went through, I feel definitely more briefed for the holidays, for example. I feel more ready to anticipate changes when they occur. I feel like I know I've gotten the reminder that I needed about the importance of support systems. And I feel that I've been able to look at ways to anticipate change and things of that nature.
And don't forget, Anthony and I and the rest of the champions are here for you if you need us.
Yep, there's quite a bit at the LDAYS that's available for everyone all around, whether you're an adult, whether you're a child listening in, whether you're a parent looking for encouragement, or you may be a parent that was recently diagnosed as well. You can all come on board. We have a variety of tools and resources, and we're here for you because we want to help everyone with learning disabilities strive.
And that brings us to the end of this discussion on navigating the holidays and new beginnings with an LD. We hope you enjoyed the insights and our stories. And if you're looking for more support or resources, like Anthony mentioned, remember that we have a variety of programs available through the LDAYS website, which is ldays.org.
We also want to make sure that we're going to express our gratitude to our listeners for their ongoing support and for following along on our journey as we strive to provide actionable strategies and resources. On behalf of LDAYS, we encourage you to consider donating, which goes to fund our programs, our services, and our future episodes. Your contributions play a crucial role in helping individuals with LDs in developing the skills necessary for success. If you are interested in donating, kindly considering e-transferring at info@ldays.org. That's info@ldays.org.
That wraps up today's episode. If you'd like to hear more from us, be sure to stay connected through our social media, website, and newsletters for updates on our upcoming episodes. Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, and Merry Christmas.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Angelica, and this is the LDAYS Plugged In.